Hey, we are catching up today with our man, John, the CEO and founder of Zaprite. Zaprite is a really, really cool payments company. And, Zaprite is one of those things where once you start using it for your business, you kind of can't. You can't live without it. At least that's what we found here. So we were lucky enough to invest in Zaprite way long ago, and we're due to catch up with John and hang out today. So how about some quick housekeeping first off? First off, this is John here on X. That's John_Zaprite. Go ahead and give him a follow. Zaprite app is their account here too. We're going to talk about the early days. They were one of the original projects in Pleb Lab way back in the day. Pleb Lab is a good friend of ours, and John still has a foot in Austin. We're going to ask him about that, and we're going to go over all of this other fun stuff too. So first off, John, welcome back. Thanks for hanging out, and how you doing on this Thursday afternoon?
Well, thanks a million for having me on. It's great to chat. It's been a while, so I'm doing great and looking forward to the conversation. It's good to be talking again.
All right, cool, man. So, we're just going to play it loose here today and just talk about Zaprite. So, first off, before we get started, anyone who doesn't know about Zaprite and how cool it is, do you just want to take them through in your own words why Zaprite is awesome?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you haven't checked out Zaprite yet, definitely go to zaprite.com, throw in your email address and spin up a free trial and check it out. No KYC needed. Just throw in an email address and you can start using it right away. As you said, Mose, once you start using it, you can't stop. You'll just realize how incredibly powerful it is and intuitive and easy to use. But ultimately what Zaprite is a Bitcoin payments gateway. So we're non-custodial. We don't provide wallets or any hosted funds or anything for users. But what we do is we provide the piping and the merchant tools to get people paid. So whether that's invoicing and billing, payment links, virtual point of sale terminals, API, event tickets, a new feature coming out very shortly. All of these great merchant tools with really beautiful design, UI, UX that enables merchants to spin up hosted checkouts and get paid in Bitcoin effortlessly without having to run a server or do any of the technical stuff in the background.
Okay, so first off, let's talk about who uses Zaprite. Okay, so obviously we use it over here for all of our invoicing needs. If you bought a book or seen Jimmy Song in person when those static payment QRs came out, he was a big fan. He had a laminated Zaprite QR sort of 8.5 by 11 that he took with him everywhere for just if you want to buy this book, or this book, or whatever product and service that is. So we have a few people there, but it's kind of unclear who really uses Zaprite from a customer perspective. When you started originally, it was a lot of the solo sort of freelancer, but it has really evolved since then. And we're going to go into the team and adding some of those all-stars that you brought on since then. But kind of who uses Zaprite now?
So it really is a mix is the short answer. You're right. It definitely started off. The original Zaprite product was an invoicing platform, which I built myself as a freelancer, a UI UX designer, graphic designer. So I built it as a tool that I needed myself, which was basically invoicing so I could get paid in Bitcoin directly to my wallet. It's since expanded out into a much more powerful platform. But that initial cohort of initial users would have been, entrepreneurs, like developers, freelancers, photographers, like people basically sending out invoices, getting paid. And as the product scaled out and expanded and we provided more and more powerful features and got more robust, we started to see a lot of different users sign up across a lot of different industries. So we still have that freelancer base, people sending out their monthly invoices, getting paid. But we see everything in between now, all the way up to large hosted miners that are doing hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of dollars in volume every month. So we're really servicing like a wide gamut of users. if I was to, kind of put my finger on it and then say what the common theme is between them all, because they are across various different industries, so you couldn't really categorize them in that way. And some are Bitcoin native companies, and some are just regular companies that just want to accept Bitcoin. But if I had to kind of put my finger on it, it would be businesses where they're generally small to medium sized businesses where the owner has direct control over everything and kind of unilaterally make that decision to accept Bitcoin. So they don't have to go through a board or go through a higher up or have meetings and try and convince other people. It's dentists, it's dentists, doctors, carpenters, people who basically run their own business, and maybe they have a few employees, but they're the ones really in control of how they're getting paid. And so they can just make that decision that they want to accept Bitcoin and get it on their balance sheet. And so they're the type of people that we see signing up, is people who get it. They understand Bitcoin, they get the store of value prop, and they realize that the next best step now is to just get it directly from their customers.
So I remember back before, I don't remember if it was 2021 or 2022, but it was certainly back then. It was basically free. It was almost free. Maybe there was a paid plan we really didn't need. And at some point in time, you made the decision to really move to getting rid of the plate lickers. The free stuff is gone. So it wasn't like a kind of a percentage of fees. I know that you couldn't do that in one way or another. So you do keep all the money with zero fees, but you really had to make that decision to go to a subscription model. Which us personally, I just paid the year the other day, and it's one of those things where we couldn't live without it. We find it's a product that, just along with everything, you as a founder and CEO, you have a million subscriptions, right, for a million different things, whatever you're using, collaborative tools or whatever. And, you try and get rid of what you don't need. And we absolutely could not live without Zaprite. So we just bought the bullet here, bit the bullet and paid for the year. But did you find that a lot of people dropped off when you made that change? Was that hard for you to do, or was that just something that needed to happen?
It was something that needed to happen. I mean, yourself, when you're running a business, you can't give it away for free indefinitely. But when you're starting up, you want to try and get as many people onboarded and using it and giving you feedback as you can. So you kind of open it up, and a lot of SaaS companies will start that way. But ultimately you have to get people paying for it as soon as you can, because you want to know that you actually have a product that's worth paying for. So we always knew we were going to charge. The transaction fee stuff is like, we wanted to get there, and we will get there soon. But it's hard to do that when you're non-custodial. You can't just take the Bitcoin in, take a percentage, and give the rest and forward the rest onto the merchant. So really, ultimately, to test the market and understand if we had a product that people would pay for, we decided to start with this very simple basic subscription model. And the reason we did that, there was a couple of reasons, but one big reason, apart from the fact that we wanted to promote that we wanted to have a paying product, the other thing was that we wanted to build our own subscription service, our own subscription product feature, so that we could eventually roll that out to our users as well. So we wanted to build our own feature in-house. And so the easiest way to do that was really just build a very simple $25 a month subscription fee for our existing user base, and then hopefully be able to iterate on that and roll it out over time so that users could actually have their own subscriptions. So that was kind of the initial, thought process behind that, was just get people paying for it, figure out if you actually have a product that people are worth paying for, and then figure out additional monetization aspects of it later on. I'll be honest, yes, we did get a lot of drop off at that point. There were a lot of people who were using the product to just send an invoice out in the hope that they would get paid in Bitcoin, but not a lot of people essentially did. They were Bitcoiners, maybe freelancers. They were just hoping that they get some payments in. So we saw a lot of those customers drop off, but we also saw a lot more customers, sign up because they understood then that, like, okay, these guys are not just giving away a free product; they're going to be around here for a while. They've, you touched on it before, but the pricing was introduced very soon after I expanded the team and brought Will and Parker on. So, between those guys joining and Zaprite signaling that we were starting to charge and we were a paid product, it kind of gave a strong signal to the market that, this is a serious product. It's going to be around for a long time. It's got the backing of some serious people. It's got some investment money and it's starting to charge for its product. So really, that was really kind of the impetus behind it, was just to send the right signal to users that we were building a robust, scalable product that was going to be around for a long time. And in order to do that, we needed to charge for the service.
So I want to draw some attention here. By the way, John is a UI UX expert. Okay, that is definitely his background and his forte. And from the very beginning, Zaprite just works, looks, and feels beautiful. If you
Appreciate that.
I'm not just yanking your chain here. It really does look and feel fantastic. Even when he was a solo man over there, working out a plan.
Yeah.
It looked great then too. I want to
Thank
bring
you.
up a couple of things, and it's super easy to use. And I'm going to go through one thing that we did that was actually pretty easy. It's easy if I can do it. But they have a ton of great video tutorials on their site here. I have no idea how this works with Breeze. I gotta figure that out. That's pretty damn impressive.
That's one of the easiest ones there for sure. Yeah.
And I want you to do a deep dive in the API here in a second, but I want to bring up this video with Parker, which is absolutely fantastic. So this was just from a few months ago in Austin at this Bitcoin takeover. It is a fantastic overview of Zaprite. So I just wanted to bring that up here. So okay,
Yeah.
so first off, let's get it out of the way here and talk about where you're at now, and going from Pleb Lab to being a venture backed company. So you started here back. Well, I don't know if you remember when it was. It was before that that weekend thing there when Kyle was still running the joint.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what happened? You basically had to leave. You had to leave the U.S. in one way or another for a visa issue. You went back to Ireland, and now you're coming back and forth. So, how did you make that jump from a Pleb Lab solo founder to a VC backed company?
Yeah, so man, it's been a few years now. I can't believe it's been 4 years in and around since all of that. But what a wild ride it's been. But yeah, I mean, I'd been living up in Canada for 12 years previously, and I came down from Canada in September of 2021 to Austin, and that was right at the time when Kyle and Cara and Keon and the boys were setting up Pleb Lab. And so I actually got offered the first desk in Pleb Lab by Kyle. I basically met Kyle 2 days after I arrived in Austin. We went and got tacos. He chatted about what he was doing with Pleb Lab, and I said, "Yeah, I'd love to get a desk. I'm working on this thing called Zaprite. I've just come down from Canada. I want to kind of hang out in Austin for a while." So I got a desk in Pleb Lab along with 9 or 10 other startup founders and companies, and it was a great time. That first year was absolutely amazing. I think you guys, Lightning Ventures, dropped in December of 2021. So I think we just got into the office in Capital Factory in October of that year, start of October of 21. So you guys rocked up, about 6 weeks later, when we were just getting kicked off. And that's where we met for the first time, and talked about Zaprite. And Lightning Ventures, as you mentioned, invested in our pre-seed in the first half of 2022. So at that time, things were moving very fast. I mean, I felt like I just landed in Austin, and Zaprite was getting a lot of attention from users and other founders and VCs and everything as well. So we managed to raise some pre-seed money, hired a full-time developer who like rewrote our code base and just like made everything just like a hell of a lot more solid and robust, and started expanding the product out from there. Um, yeah, and then in the end of 22, if I have my dates right, the end of 22, I applied for a visa in the US. It was still in the US at the time, and I applied for a working visa through Zaprite, and it got rejected. And so I had to leave the US basically, within 24 hours, because I was technically in an illegal gray area at that time. Um, so I basically like hightailed it out, got back to Ireland, applied for the exact same visa again, sent in the exact same paperwork into the US Embassy in Dublin, and 10 months later, I got the visa, no problem. But in that 10 months that I'd stayed, I'd kind of, I'd fallen in love with Ireland all over again. I hadn't been there in 15 years, 14 or 15 years, like I hadn't lived there. So just hanging out with family and new nieces and nephews, and catching up with old friends and going out for dinners and doing things. I just kind of said, I'll hang around here for a while. So anyway, that's the kind of long story about how I ended up like in staying in Ireland. Here I am at the moment. But in that time, Zaprite has just grown, a hell of a lot. Parker Lewis and Will Cole joined in May of 2023, which was a huge boost, because I think at that time, as a solo founder, I had basically gone, I'd taken the project kind of, as I felt as far as I could, take it on based on my skill set. And it was at a stage where it had a lot of attention and had like users, it had people who were doing some serious volume, and it required the help of a couple of people who had skills that I didn't have, business development skills, some larger product skill sets. And so, Parker and Will had left Unchained, about 6 months previously. They were looking for something new to do. They landed on the payment space, and they were looking to do something very similar to Zaprite. So they approached me, and asked could they join, because they kind of figured out that I had done 90% of what they were planning to build. So they joined, and the three of us have just been crushing it ever since, with our developer Tom, who's in France, who's a phenomenal developer. He's been on board now for, I think soon after we did the pre-seed raise, he was the first hire we basically got. That was the first money spent was to hire full-time proper full stack dev. We've had a couple of part-timers helping us out along the way as well, of course. And then in October of last year, we hired Nate as our CTO, who another amazing friend who'd been with Zaprite since the beginning, helping get it off the ground. I met him when I was doing some freelance UI UX design work for Bull Bitcoin in Canada, where he worked. He went to work for Unchained, and then in October last year, came to work for us at Zaprite. So really now we have an absolutely amazing, like really strong team. And so, for the last couple of years, particularly, we've just been heads down building, but particularly, since Nate came on in October, we've had, a growth in capacity in our dev team. And now we're doing some like really big stuff that we've been working on for the last few months. So yeah, that's really kind of a catch up on where we are at the moment and how we've got here. But yeah, continuing to grow as a business. I think the team is just like a good size now that we can just continue to punch forward, and we don't have to get worried about about how we can kind of like get through our roadmap and things like that. Now we've got like Nick as well, who's a PlebLab based developer who's helping us out on a part-time basis too. So we've got some really good hands on deck helping out.
So going from the solo PlebLab days, maybe you had a couple of angel checks early on. Maybe you had a 25K here or there, or a couple of people who might have participated as a part of that pre-seed before you really got some gas in the tank. And then, well, it's no secret because I think it's on their website. 1031 either led the round or took the majority of it. You're in the 1031 clan,
Yes.
over there. And then you were able to, pretty much right after that raise or simultaneously add some of these big names. Parker, Will, Nick, How do you add those big names? I don't know if you've ever raised money after. Did you ever take more money after that, or was that it?
No, that was it. Well, we took a small amount in when Parker and Will joined. So um, the initial pre-seed that Lightning Ventures and as you mentioned, 1031 and Fulgur Ventures participated in, the goal was to raise 500K. And by the middle of 2022, we got 400K, and the bear market was just, fully set in at that point. And it was really just, it was very, very hard to even get like, meetings at that point. So I basically just said, okay, 400K is great. That's enough for me to get going. So I kind of just stopped at that and went back and started building. But when Parker and Will joined in May of 23, we just basically filled out the rest of that pre-seed with a couple more checks just to give us a little bit more cash in the bank and runway. So so that's really kind of the only fundraising we've done since then. We're looking at something now, which I can't talk about too much, but we'll have some more money in the bank very soon again. But the majority of that pre-seed raise went straight into Bitcoin at the time, practically all of it. So as Bitcoin came out of the bear market and started to climb over the last few years, it just extended our runway like considerably, which I think is, it's a huge benefit and an advantage that Bitcoin companies have, especially if they have the ability to put a lot of their funding into Bitcoin. If you're a small startup like Zaprite and you don't have a very large team with a big burn, then you can dump a lot of that Bitcoin or a lot of that funding into Bitcoin, and just kind of have that long term outlook, which will basically just push your runway out quite a bit. Um, so yeah, that was that got us a little bit more cash in the bank in 2023, and then since then, like I said, we've just been pushing forward on our low burn rate on our Bitcoin treasury ever since. And really, as I touched on before, just it got to the stage where I was kind of looking for that additional help to really bring Zaprite to the next level, get a really quality business development person on board. And what better biz dev can you ask for than Parker Lewis? So it's really blessed to have those guys approach and start having negotiations and conversations, because they saw the value in what I was building. I think Parker was finishing up writing his book at the time. He was looking to start selling his book. He wanted to have a really simple hosted checkout where he's not a developer, right? He didn't want to have to go and run a BTC Pay server or write some code to write a checkout or build any new tools. He just wanted something simple he could plug an Xpub into that would derive addresses on a checkout, and maybe connect his Strike wallet for Lightning, and have it all work seamlessly, and the funds just went straight to him in his own self custody through the Xpub or whatever he had connected. So he was looking for the exact tool that I had built, and himself and Will obviously had a lot of ideas and visions on how to move forward with a product like that. So we chatted for a couple of months, and we kind of made sure that we all aligned on vision and where we wanted to bring the product and ideas that we had. And then they jumped on board, and they signed the line and they joined Zaprite. And from then, I think like I said, the team has just got stronger and stronger. So it's been, it's been, you do think about these things as a solo founder. You think to yourself, especially when you're somebody who's not really well known within the space and you've kind of remained, off the radar and hidden in the background. I was always a nim on Twitter, just kind of like lurking. So nobody knew who I was. But yeah, it's basically, it's basically just one of those things where you kind of learn along the way, right? You just kind of figure it out as a solo first time founder. You just figure a lot of this stuff out, and hope that you don't make too many mistakes along the way.
So one of the things in the early days when just kicking around ideas, you were vehemently against all licenses. You did
Mm-hmm.
not want to ever get licenses or custody funds or deal with anything in that regard. And you've pretty much avoided any need for any MTLs. And I'm sure Parker was there probably through that whole process at Unchained and getting
Mm-hmm.
those. And you've managed to do that. So Has your opinion on that changed? Are you thankful that that's the way that it is with everything that's going on in the government and regulatory changes? And I mean, the connections is pretty absurd what you can do with Zaprite that you've built with no licenses. I mean, you can pretty much connect anything you want here. I mean, we connected Stripe, which we'd never had a Stripe account before, and I did it myself. So that'll tell you how easy it is if I can do it. And it works like a champ, and it was absolutely freaking great. Um, so, talk about a little bit about the self custody Bitcoin and Lightning payments and the no need for licenses.
Yeah. So, I mean, as I'm obviously like hugely passionate about Bitcoin and in particular about self custody, and that was really the driving factor behind starting Zaprite is wanting something where I could get paid to my own self custody without a intermediary. So that was really the whole idea behind it, and that's generally been the thesis of how we operate and how we build a lot of the features. It's all geared around trying to promote self custody and make things as simple as possible. Um, yeah, from the very start, I've just been against licenses. You know, licenses, unfortunately, they're a part of the world that we live in. If you're building a particular type of product, you've got to get licenses. And, if that's the case, it's not like I'm going to look down on anybody who gets licenses. If you got to do it, you got to do it. But the way I look at it is, once you dip your toe in there, you're just in a world of hurt forever because the regulations are constantly going to change. The licensing is constantly changing. You know, you got to be just monitoring everything like every single day to figure out like if you're doing something wrong, if something has changed, you need a new license. There's just a lot of stuff that um you know it just starts to increase the suck of time and money and lawyers fees and all this kind of stuff like once you go down that route. So I've definitely been against that from the very beginning, and as you said, we've managed to avoid it um because we're not custodying the funds. And that's a key thing with Zaprite is we do not custody funds. We never touch money. We are never in control of users' money. We cannot unilaterally decide to like step in and take users' money at any time in the flow. And I think that's really critical. Um, at the very start, I was against adding a lot of fiat connections as well. I thought I wanted to be a pure Bitcoin play company. I remember talking to you, Moz, in Baltic Honey Badger in 2023, and you were trying to get me to add more, like PayPal and like all of these things because that's what people use, and you got to have them in there. And I was like, no, 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 we don't need to do that. And slowly over time, we've realized like, okay, Bitcoin as payments is taking longer than we all wanted. We got to meet people where they are. Particularly, one of the things that makes Zaprite really great, and one of the things that I think like entices a lot of people to sign up for Zaprite is the ability to have this one unified checkout where you can take fiat and Bitcoin side by side. So you don't have to have these two, like, oh, here, go over here to my Stripe checkout to pay credit card, or go over here to my BTC Pay to take Bitcoin. With Zaprite, you can basically connect your BTC Pay, connect your Stripe, connect anything else you want, and you have it on this one unified checkout. That's super simple to basically, set up and install. And I think that's like really, really crucial for keeping that real easy user flow UI UX for people to be able to meet merchants where they are and have them sign up with the accounts that they're already accustomed to and already using. So if you're using Square or Stripe or PayPal, we don't want you to have to go somewhere else to process your credit cards. If you're already using Strike or like Unchained, or you got a Breeze or an Albi wallet, we want you to be able to connect those, and we don't want you to have to be signing up for yet another wallet and different things. So I think that's the really unique part of Zaprite, is that we offer all of these connections, where, as you say, we meet merchants where they are. We make it super simple for them to sign up and connect these wallets, and that's really at the core of what we do. And it's a very unique approach that nobody else is really doing to the degree that we're doing it. And so I think having those fiat payment rails side by side with Bitcoin on the checkout is a is a real draw. It's a feature of Zaprite. And so, we started to look at more like PayPal and things like that. So yeah, that it kind of made sense for us at that point.
So what are the most used? Like, what's next? Because I think you have pretty much everything here. I don't think you can do a Zelle, or what else do you have? You have like Zelle, Venmo. Just thinking in, because I'm always the one, like you said, that's screaming more fiat. Because does anyone pay in Bitcoin? Does everyone really use Bitcoin? But as far as the integrations go, what's like the most used? What is like the most used part of Zaprite for these integrations? And then is it pretty much easy? Does everyone just use maybe Strike, or do people use Speed, or do people use kind of both, or plug in their own? What are you seeing? And then also kind of like, what's next? You've got pretty much everything out there that you can imagine.
Well, there's always new integrations that we can add. We're working on a BitGo integration right now. We've got, a bunch of, we're adding descriptor wallets so people can add, things like Thea and multi-sig platforms and custodial platforms and things like that. So there's always a lot more features and integrations we can do on the connection side. So that will continue, indefinitely, as long as, as many connections as there are. Like we'll just keep going. If there's a use case for them, if users are asking us for them, and there's a big user base, we'll do it. In terms of what people are using, so by far on the Lightning side, it's Strike, without doubt. Custodial, unfortunately, that's just where Lightning is at the moment, and Strike is just one of the best at that. So it's kind of makes sense that the Lightning payments have gravitated towards that. Strike also has an incredible team and an incredible API, and they've worked very closely with us on a lot of things, and they've made updates and changes to their APIs based on our feedback and requests. So they're really great to work with, and they make their products so easy to use, both on the consumer side and on the business API side. So we see a lot of Strike use. On the on-chain side, the self-custody Xpub Bitcoin wallet is, again, by far the number one. So they'd be the two biggest ones that we see is somebody putting in an Xpub and then connecting, say, something like Strike for the Lightning. We do see more and more people using, Speed and different things like that. We got a bunch of people using the LND connection, which would, that's either going to be a Start9 or an Umbrel or something like that, or what's the case more often than not is a voltage node. They'll basically be running a voltage node, and they'll just plug in the LND connection information from their voltage node, and that works, really, really well, because you're getting a ClearNet URL with that, and everything is super fast, and you're not waiting for Tor connections and stuff. So they're, by far the biggest connections that we have. We haven't released any numbers, publicly, but we're doing millions in volume every month, and 75 to 80% of that is Bitcoin, and 20% is fiat. And in that Bitcoin, it's 25 to 1 on chain over Lightning, which surprises a lot of people. When people think about Bitcoin payments, they kind of automatically jump to Lightning. And we tell them, like, for every 1 Bitcoin in Lightning volume we do 20 or 25 in on chain. And that just, you see people's faces being like, oh, whoa, people actually use on-chain for payments. So yeah, like a lot of the merchants and the customers that we have, they're sending 4, 5, 6-figure invoices. So like they on-chain, that's just where they go to, and there's no other product that does it any better than Zaprite. So you asked the question earlier, like, is anybody really paying in Bitcoin? And yes, they are. There's a lot of people that are paying in Bitcoin. Tether's starting to come in and poke its head up in the equation a little bit as well. We're not doing a lot of that right now, but we're starting to look at different connections we can add in. But by and large, the vast majority, like I said, 75, 80% of our volume is Bitcoin.
So no stable coins in here.
No, we're trialing stable coins with one user at the moment, who's doing a good bit of volume on the stablecoin side. So we're switching on some payments in the background for them, and we're going to start testing those, see how they go, and start adding in some more. Strike, for example, has USDT. It's not available in Europe or North America at the moment. I think it's in maybe a dozen African or LATAM countries. So we'll look at switching that on at some point as well, especially when they enable it for US. We'll absolutely have that in there. Speed are doing some really good stuff with USDTL, Tether over Lightning. So we'll start looking at those connections as well. We're talking to those guys. We already have a Speed connection, so we'll look at how we can actually start to integrate a lot of their Tether stuff that they're doing. So as more and more things, Tether options become available with more platforms, we'll start looking at adding them in. There is demand there right now, but it's not massive demand, but it's definitely growing.
So that volume that you mentioned is massive. That's a lot.
It's
And I would have never
yeah.
guessed. I would have never guessed 75, 80% Bitcoin versus fiat. That is surprising. Um, so,
Yeah.
so, so unlike a company like OpenNode or IBEX, which I believe you have both of those integrations with
hmm
Zaprite, they're on like a 1% kind of revenue model. So for your seven figures or whatever you're doing, you're getting $20 a month or what, a $25 a month or whatever is subscription model. So
hmm
are you finding that the bulk of that revenue is coming from just a few Zaprite users, or are you kind of finding like a long tailed like distribution? Because it's impressive. I'm sure on a chart, it looks incredible to see the volume increase with Zaprite, but really it also kind of comes down to paid subscribers, right? I want you to go through the API. I know you have a great webinar and you've hosted many of them. In a second, I'm going to ask you about the API, but your
hmm
bottom line is subscriber growth, right? Unless there's something that I'm missing.
Well, so as I kind of hinted at before, is we will be switching over to transaction volume fees at some point in the near future. It just makes sense to go that way. As I mentioned, the $25 a month subscription fee was our kind of first, you know, toe in the water, so to speak, just to say like, this is a paid product. We want people to understand that it's not free. We need to charge for the service. And so, at the moment we're working on building out a billing engine that allows us to charge the volume on the fees. Now, obviously we can't, take that directly from customers because we're non-custodial. So we'll basically just have something like billing in arrears, right? Where you use it for a month and at the end of the month you get a bill saying these are the fees. And your subscription fee every month will just cover a whole bunch of those fees. You'll get whatever you pay in your subscription fee will cover. You won't pay fees until you go over and above that. We're still finalizing some of this stuff, but yeah, like we're a business, we're seeing a lot of volume growth, and we have to be able to continue to survive as a business. So we need to figure out a way to monetize that volume growth. Um, and for us, the volume, the transaction volume is growing quicker than subscriber base, because the type of users that we're onboarding and that we're seeing approach us and want to onboard, like I said, they're doing large volume every month, whether they're hosted miners or whether they're just they're businesses that are sending out large invoices, taking in maybe sponsorship payments, things like that. The so when we see that and we look at that, we're like, okay, look, we have to be able to monetize that volume and continue to provide the excellent service that we do, and the robust, reliable product that we do, and that requires charging fees on the transactions. They'll be low fees. They're not going to be 2 to 3% like credit cards. They'll be like sub 1%. But it will be just on Bitcoin transactions. So we'll finalize that, and we'll start communicating that like closer to the time. But it's definitely something that we're looking at.
Okay, so take us through the API, APIs and webhooks, all these fancy words. Who is that for? Are you getting much traction on the API side? I know this was like a milestone
Yeah.
when the news hit. Are you seeing much traction over there? And like, what are the use cases? Can you point to any customers, or is that something that you don't really do? I know that our accountant, and he wouldn't mention saying it, Joe Wood, Satoshi Pacioli. We pay it every month in Zaprite. We get invoice. I get invoices all the time. that are Zaprite
Mm.
invoices, and every invoice we send is a Zaprite invoice. But who is kind of the API for?
I mean, short answer is the API is for anybody, but yes, we're seeing a lot of traction on it. And basically, what the API, you can think about the API is when you log into Zaprite currently in the logging into the web app, you have this beautiful UI that provides you all of these merchant tools like invoicing and payment links and all these different things, virtual point of sale terminals. And these are all really great for somebody who's non-technical and just wants to be able to spin up hosted checkouts to get paid for, whether it's selling a book or sending an invoice or whatever it might be. But for the more technical users, particularly like say, larger businesses who have their own platforms, maybe they have their own SaaS platform and they want to take payments. So they just want the hosted checkout part of Zaprite. So what the API allows them to do is it allows them to create a Zaprite account. They go into the web app, they create a Zaprite account as normal, they make their connections, and they create their custom checkout. And then they just get an ID, a little string of custom checkout ID. And then they can go and use our API and pass that checkout ID in. And now they can bill anything and send anything into that checkout from their own external app. And they're basically just going to send their customers to the checkout. It pulls up the Zaprite hosted branded checkout with all their connection and payment methods. The customer pays, and then it redirects them back over to their site. So they're basically getting all of the power of this beautiful branded unified hosted checkout from Zaprite, but it's built into their current system. And the advantage that offers is if you want to build all these payment rails into your own application. Let's say you've got an application or website or SaaS app or whatever it is you're building, and you want to take lightning payments and on-chain payments and credit card payments. There's at least 3 APIs that you got to work with, right? You got to work with maybe Square or Stripe's API. You got to work with building Bitcoin tools to take Bitcoin payments and working with a Bitcoin JS library. You got to work with Lightning. You either build your own, run your own Lightning node and create your own invoices, or you got to work with Stripe's API or somebody else's Ibex's API or somebody OpenNode, BTC Pay. The beauty of Zaprite is you're working with one API. It's just one API endpoint where we've already done that heavy lifting of building all of those integrations. So you're literally coming to Zaprite. You're spending less than 5 minutes connecting 2 or 3 different connections to create your checkout. And then you're just going and using our API to have that checkout load in front of your users and then redirect back over. So that's really the beauty and the power of the Zaprite API is it enables you to build anything, really, anything at all you can imagine that you want to sell. You can basically use Zaprite's quick hosted branded checkout. So you don't have to build the payment part of your product, whatever that is. And to give you a couple of examples of people who might be doing that. One, we have a hosted miner who basically, when they get users that are signing up, they're buying machines, and then the hosted miner is hosting those on their rack space and maintaining them and managing them and charging them monthly hosting fees to do that. So what happens is they'll use our API to programmatically create an invoice, which is our standard invoice product that you see in the app, but you can do all of that through the API. So they'll create an invoice with line items and everything, and that'll be for the rigs that they're selling the user when the user signs up. And then they get that invoice, they get it paid, and then once they sign up, they can create an account in the background on their system because they're getting all the webhooks and notifications when those invoices are paid and everything. So they can go and create their customer account, and then it syncs over to Zaprite. And then when they have hosting fees every month, these are variable amounts that they may not know based on different energy costs or different machines they have or how long they've been on or off or getting serviced or whatever. So those are variable amounts every month that their platform is already calculating. And so all they need to do now is send that amount as an integer over to Zaprite, and we basically build that checkout and send it over to the customer, and they can do automated credit card payments if they want. Somebody wants to pay with, they can save their credit card on file and we'll do all the auto charges, or they can just pay with Bitcoin or Lightning through the checkout. The other really cool one I'll mention quickly is Open Secret with their Maple AI. I don't know how familiar you are with those guys, but it's the ex-Mutiny guys who built open secret, and one of their first kind of test products was, well, not test products, it's fully live and amazing product right now. I use it all the time, but it's an encrypted AI chat platform. So if you don't want to be going into ChatGPT and having all of your chats like basically being fed to God knows who, but so they've built an encrypted chat, and they released an iOS app. And now that Apple have the famous court ruling there from a couple of months ago, where the judge ruled that Apple can't block external payments within apps. They can't force people to go through the App Store payments now. It can be anybody. So Maple basically used Zaprite's checkouts to take payments inside their iOS app for their subscription plans. And it was, we believe, the first time that external Bitcoin, specifically Bitcoin, payments have been used in an iOS app. Literally within a week or two after that ruling was announced, they had our integration done in a matter of hours. They had their iOS app updated, sent into the store, and now they're people can pay in Bitcoin for their subscription plans through their iOS app, which is amazing, that's a really cool use case to see. So now that's one of the really powerful things about the API is anybody who's building an iOS app or anything like that can use our external checkouts to bounce out, take payments, and back, all with inside their iOS app, all fully approved by the App Store and everything. So it's really, really exciting stuff to see, integrations like that.
So the pricing on the API, is there a certain number of calls there, or is that just still included with your monthly service?
Right now, it's included with the monthly service. When we start charging transaction fees, there'll be kind of like standard fees on that. But we're building a really powerful billing engine that enables us to have billing in different areas of the product for different things and different rates. So we're still working on exactly what that's going to look like. We're not going to have fees on everything to begin with. We won't have any fees on fiat, of course. So if Stripe is charging you 2.9% or whatever, we're not going to add anything on top of that. It'll just be on the Bitcoin side. So yeah, a lot of this is still, in progress and still to be determined. But again, right now it's currently all just bundled into your $25 a month fee. So that will, that will change in some format over the coming months. But right now it's a really powerful feature that you get to use for within your current subscription.
Yeah, I'll say. All right, 2 more quick questions, and then we're coming up on time here. So the future of Zaprite, okay, 5 years from now, where do you see things? Are we in a hyper Bitcoinized world?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question. I think definitely in 5 years we'll have a lot more Bitcoin payments. I think Bitcoin payments will be a much bigger part of the future in 5 years' time. I've no doubt about that. When I started Zaprite, it was you could still ask the question, were we too early? It was a question that people asked, and it was definitely a different vibe then, 4 or 5 years ago. Now, I firmly believe right now in present day, we are not too early. We are just on the precipice of payments becoming more mainstream. So in 5 years, I've absolutely no doubt about it. I think Bitcoin payments will definitely be more mainstream, especially, with things like AI and things like that. I think, Lightning and, Cashew and Fedimint and all these things, they're just becoming so much more stable and advanced, and a lot is being built, around these areas where I think, tooling will advance so much that, payments will definitely be mainstream in terms of maybe a little bit slower on the retail side, but online, absolutely, it'll, in 5 years' time, I've no doubt about it, that'll be a huge part of online payments. And that's really the space that Zaprite is servicing, is the online payments world. So that's long term in the future. I did mention, I just want to throw in quickly, because I know we're running out of time, is a feature that we're about to release. We're beta testing with a couple of users right now. They've gone live with a couple of landing pages of event tickets. So we've built a fully integrated, fully featured event ticket product. So you can now sell tickets, issue tickets, have QR codes sent to users, like proper tickets you can add to your, Apple Wallet, Google Wallet, and then a scanning feature where you can scan people in, check them in, do all of those wonderful things like you normally would with any ticketing platform. So being beta tested now, live, a couple of users have gone live with that. So we expect to be able to roll that out to everybody in the very near future. So that's something in the very near future. But yeah, 5 years time, definitely payments are going to be a massive part of the scene for sure.
So you're saying in upcoming Satoshi Nakamoto, we're going to be able to pilot this Zaprite tickets.
Absolutely. If you want access to it now, let's talk off air or hit me an email after this is done, and we'll get you guys synced up so you can check it out. If you've got an event coming up in the near future and you want to turn it on, now we can get you to do that. If not, if you don't have anything right now, it'll certainly be available like within the next kind of month or two.
All right. Well, if I can lock up Riga and Helsinki, then we're gonna make it happen. So
Excellent. Yeah, perfect.
last but not least, what do you have to say to all the young founders out there, the people who are just coming into Pleb Lab, banging their head against the wall, wondering, if it's all worth it, and looking for that breakthrough? You can only pitch all 6 Bitcoin focused VCs so many times before you either need one of them to bite or you got to figure something out. I mean, what do you have like a major takeaway? If you could give yourself some advice, 4 years ago, what would you have told yourself?
I mean, the first thing I'll say is that coming from my standpoint, like I mentioned earlier, I built a product that I had a need for. And that's a really strong background to come from. Not everybody is in that position, but if you are in that position, I would say, go for it. If you have a product that like you believe needs to exist in the market because you have a need for it, or you have friends that have a need for it, or family members, just go and build it. And any product that has a need will get users quickly, and you'll get very quick feedback and validation. So that would be the first thing I do, is don't be afraid to just go and build it. The other thing is, if possible, go to somewhere like Pleb Lab. Whether it is Pleb Lab in Austin, or it's the space in Denver, or Bitcoin Park in Nashville, or any of these places that will allow you to pull up a chair at a desk and start building Bitcoin products. The amount of support that's available from these places is it can't be overstated. It's immensely powerful to be sitting around other like-minded Bitcoiners and builders and founders. Just the amount of inspiration and support you get is definitely worth it. So what I'd say is, get yourself to one of these places if you can. If you can, to join an online community, that's the closest you can get to that. But definitely keep building. Keep going with those ideas that you have. Get them in front of people as quickly as possible. That's one of the lessons that I would have done differently if I was doing things over again. Is I would get my product in front of more people as quickly as possible. I spent a lot of time building Zaprite in private, because I thought I didn't want to give my idea away to anybody. I didn't want anybody to know my idea or steal my idea. And a lot of people think this, especially first-time founders. But it's nonsense, because the idea is just one part of it, and execution and building the product is another. If you have an idea, build an MVP and just get it in front of as many people as you can. Start, blasting it out online, go to meetups, go to workshops, go to like hackathon, or like, event days that places like Bitcoin Park and Pleb Lab are operating. And that would really be my takeaway, is just get yourself in amongst it, and get your product known, and keep building, because something will come out of it, for sure. Whether it's that product, or whether it, the connections you make leads you down another path, it's definitely worthwhile to just keep pursuing it, because hard work always bears fruit. So that would be my my call, is just proof of work. Just put it in, you'll get rewarded.
All right. All right, John. So listen, everyone, go to zaprite.com, get the 30-day free trial, promo code Muzz. Just kidding with you. I pay as well. I don't even get it for free. Go to Zaprite, check it out. Make sure to bombard John with all of your questions. Look forward to catching up soon. I don't know if you're going to any of these upcoming conferences. Maybe we can hang up there. Maybe, just maybe, we'll have an opportunity to invest in Zaprite through our really cool Thunder Funder or Lightning Ventures. Maybe it's possible. Who knows? But look, thanks for taking time out of your busy day to hang out, and your words of wisdom are much appreciated.
Thanks, Mose. Appreciate it. It was a great chat, and it was, as always, good to talk.
You got it. Cheers.